Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mindset Matters. My name is Victoria. I'm super excited for you guys to be joining us today. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Danny Reid joining us today. Danny is a professional footballer or soccer player for anyone who needs that term. Danny grew up in Connecticut, USA. He played college soccer in Northwest Pennsylvania before moving to Europe to pursue his professional career. Danny has faced and overcome many forms of adversity and faced countless challenges on his journey to professional soccer. So his story is just super inspirational, and it's a great example of faith, mindset, perseverance, and just overall self-belief. So welcome, Danny. We're happy to
Thank you
have
for
you.
having me. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. That might have been maybe one of the nicest introductions I think anyone's ever given me. But yeah, really a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we're glad to have you. So right away, I would love to know something that you're excited about right now. What's going on for you?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, something I'm really excited about is I actually recently got hurt. Like in like the last 2 weeks, I got like a minor hamstring injury. So it was like a grade one hamstring strain. And for anyone who's like experienced a hamstring injury, it's really frustrating because all you have to do is rest. Like you literally
Mm,
can't do any like rehab, can't do anything like that. So you just rest. But yeah, I'm at the point where like I've been able to start running again. Like I've been doing like change of speed, change of direction work, as well as like PT. So fingers crossed, like either this week or next week, I'll be back to full fitness and be able to be available
okay.
for games again. Yeah. So
Awesome. Okay, Danny, I'd love to know like what do you love about football? Like what's your favorite thing?
yeah, I mean, I think for me, like it's just I just love the game, and I think for me at least, like a lot of like problems that maybe I was like facing like over the day or like week kind of just like disappear as soon as I
Mm,
start playing football. Like for me, it's just like the ultimate escape. And so like whenever I like, even in like training or just like kick around with my friends or in matches, like everything sort of just like disappears and then it's just me and like the game. And so I think it's a great form of like stress relief for me, almost a form of like meditation, if you will, too,
mm.
because I feel like, yeah, like I was just saying, all my problems just disappear as soon as I'm playing. So I think that's what
I
I love
love
about it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you need to be kind of in the zone. Do you have like a pregame ritual that you do to kind of just get you right in the right headspace to play?
Yeah, I mean, so this is really interesting because a lot of athletes talk about like the importance of routine. And like, I mean, I 100% agree. Like, I have my own sort of routine, but I don't really have like a very strict one. Like, I don't always eat the same pregame food. Like, I don't always do the same things. I kind of just go and do like kind of whatever I'm feeling. Obviously, once I get to like the ground, the stadium and stuff, and it's like a couple hours before pregame, my routine is very strict. So yeah, like I mean, I'll listen to like pretty much the same music. Like I'll think the same thoughts. And always like the night before, I'll try and envision myself like doing things in the game, which sounds kind of
Okay.
weird, but I found that that really helps just like envisioning sort of what might happen, what I'll do in those situations, and just like sort of almost manifesting like what could
Yeah.
happen and what will happen. So yeah,
No,
I
for
think
sure.
that's
I've definitely like heard of visualization as like a huge form of manifestation, even just in general with your goals. Like you have to visualize your success in order to actually make it happen. So I think that's a
yeah.
great technique. I'm happy that works for you. So how did you get into playing soccer? Did you as a kid sample other sports or did you just like right away want to play soccer? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to play like football right away. My dad was a really talented college soccer player, so like growing up, there's kind of just always like a football laying around the house. So yeah, I always tell people just that I started playing pretty much as soon as I could walk, and yeah, I mean, so you're from like Canada, you're from Toronto, and so I don't know if it's
Yeah.
the same with you, but like for me growing up, my parents and I think most of society just encourages you to play a wide range of sports. Not for
Mm,
any reason, but just to sort of like experience a bunch of different things. So yeah, I mean, I played soccer, I played baseball, I played golf, I ran, I played like basketball and like football as well, but never like competitively.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I feel like I played a range of sports, which I feel, actually was really helpful in terms of my career and my journey.
Yeah, definitely. I read a book called Range. I think it's by David Epstein, and like it talks about how just not even in sports, but in general, having like a different like a wide range of experiences can help you be a better problem solver because you can like pick apart things from different situations and then add it to whatever situation you're in. Whereas people who are hyper focused on one thing, that's all they know. So it's hard to maybe look at things from a different perspective. So I
Yeah.
feel like that definitely relates to sports. He talks a lot about, yeah, a bunch of different areas of life, but sports was, I think, his opener in the book, which was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like too, like I think two important things came from me playing like a range of sports. Like one is exactly what you just said, like all the intangible skills sort of that I was able to pick up from each sport. Like with running, I was able to obviously build like stamina, fitness, which is obviously really important for football. Like with baseball, it's really mental. Like you just sort of know what might happen and then what you'll do like in every certain scenario, and you have to be like really able to sort of think like on the fly. And for me, like, so I'm a center midfielder, that's really important for my position is like just awareness, like knowing what's going on. And I find myself like kind of doing similar things, like trying to anticipate like exactly what's going to happen before anyone else sort of anticipates it too. Um, but yeah, I think another important thing too about playing a range of sports was just like not getting burnt out from playing like one sport my whole life, you know, like I feel like that's really common with athletes who only play singular sport and don't experience like anything else. Is that like after what, like 20-ish years of playing the exact same thing every day, they just like don't want to do it anymore, you know? So I feel like for me that was really important.
Yeah, and I feel like sampling and seeing like what you actually like and then what you want to pursue. And I think you mentioned that you didn't actually think you were going to be a pro player at first, but you wanted to, didn't you want to go pro in baseball or something else
Yeah, I mean,
originally?
like, yeah, so obviously my dad was, he was really like really good college soccer player, but he just loves baseball. Like his
Okay.
favorite team's the Mets. So historically I haven't done very well, but yeah, he just loves them. So yeah, I would just like watch baseball with him, you know, like many a night. And yeah, that was kind of just my first sort of love. And I don't know, yeah, I always thought I'd be a professional baseball player first, like growing up. Like I never really
Yeah.
considered playing professional soccer until I was probably about 18. So yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. And it's just like an
Mm.
interesting like the path that life takes you, you never really
Oh,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, no, for
Um,
sure, for real, for real.
yeah. So having your dad as like a successful athlete in your household and he was, I believe, one of your first coaches,
Hmm.
did you feel growing up that there was some sort of like added pressure, like you wanted to live up to like his success or his expectations, or was your family just like overall really supportive? Like what was that dynamic like?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a little bit of pressure. Like, I'm not going to say it was like overwhelming in any stretch of the imagination, but like, and it wasn't even necessarily like an expectation or pressure to live up to what he did. It was more of just like a pressure just to like always like try and make them proud. And I feel like, you know, like that's every kid's sort of experience. Like they just want to make their parents proud and stuff. Obviously, my dad was my first coach, and like, yeah, I'd say there was a bit of pressure in terms of that aspect because like being like the coach's kid or whatever, like
Yeah.
there is an expectation on you, you know? Like and I feel like it's a lose-lose too, because right, if you play and you do well, everyone's like, oh, that's he's only playing because he's the coach's kid. But then if you don't do well, it's like, how can he not do well like he's the coach's kid? You know? So
Yeah.
it was definitely like that was kind of a strange dynamic, but obviously I'm really
Mhm.
grateful for that. So
Yeah, I grew up playing soccer as well, and I never had my parents as a coach. So I always felt I could feel that pressure of like the coach's daughter. Like she would get, depending on the coach, like they would just be harder on them because it's like their kid and they have this
yeah.
different relationship.
For sure, yeah. And I feel like for me too, I was quite lucky because my dad only coached me until I was about like 8 or 9, and then I actually
Okay.
ended up like getting a new coach. But I feel like that was an age where it was just nice to have like support instead of like necessarily
Mm.
being reliant on performance. Because obviously, when you're like 4 or 5, like everyone's terrible anyways, you know?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
8 or 9 is like kind of that age where you see who's developing and like actually doing well and maybe gonna pursue going to like a I don't know, like a higher level or something versus it
Yeah,
all just
absolutely.
being one level until that age. So I feel like that's also a good, yeah, just like, okay, have another coach and then your parents are more there as like your support system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
like that. Okay, so you didn't actually see yourself as a pro footballer until you said about 18 years old. So
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Was it something you didn't necessarily want? Was it something you weren't sure was possible? Like, were there other
Hmm.
influences involved to like make you think about it a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely like attribute a lot of that sort of realization to my college coach. So I ended up playing, or I played like Division 3 in college. And for anyone who doesn't know, that's actually the lowest level of college soccer. It's like, so it goes Division 3, Division 2, Division 1. So I played Division 3 and like, yeah, it's just something I never considered because I feel like if you don't play Division 1 in the US, it's very, very, very difficult to eventually go pro. Um, so yeah, I really didn't consider that at all, and I was really fortunate because my college coach actually played professionally, so he had obviously all the knowledge of sort of what it takes, what you need to kind of have in terms of your skills, like your mindset, your determination, everything. And yeah, I mean, I always considered it like I always said like in like the back of my head, oh yeah, that'd be a cool thing, to be able to like play professional soccer. But yeah, it wasn't until I was about junior year in college, so I was about maybe 20 where it became like a really strong sort of like want, and I felt like, maybe it is possible. And it came when we are doing our individual meetings for the next season. So basically coach would invite every player into his office, say like, this is where we see you for the season, like this is what you need to improve on, this is what we want from you, et cetera, et cetera. He said, you know, if you want, Danny, like you could actually probably do something with soccer like after college. And I said, like, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you wanted to play like soccer professionally, like I definitely see like like the skills that you have and like, the work rate and everything. And he said, yeah, like I just think that you could be successful in that. And I feel like no one had ever kind of said that to me before, and that kind of was like a big realization. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think too, sometimes we don't necessarily believe something's possible for us until someone else tells us. Like, I think it's great. You can always believe in yourself, but there's definitely something to say about external viewpoints, especially from someone like a coach. Like, if
Oh,
they're telling
absolutely.
me that I'm good enough, it's like, whoa, I almost didn't even think about that. And then now you start to believe it, like, okay, wait, I am good enough. Like, okay,
Yeah,
let's maybe go for it.
yeah. And I think too, like, because every, like, when I was growing up, right, I'd go to like all these different soccer camps, and like some of them would be like talking about like college and like people who played professionally. And I swear every single one would give us the same like statistic. They'd be like, oh, like less than
Mm,
1% of all soccer players go professionally. And then there was another statistic saying like it's even less percentage of that. Like it's like the lowest percentage. I'm not going to say it because I don't really remember. But
yeah.
of like Division 3 players who go professionally. And they would always say like, oh, if you go Division 3, just like just make sure you kind of have like a backup. So like in my head,
Mm,
when I went there, I was like, okay, like I'll play soccer, like I'll always play soccer for my life, like for the rest of my life, but like maybe I'll work like as like an advertiser or like do something else like creative
yeah.
and then play that on the side. So yeah, I never really considered it
Okay.
until my coach said that. Yeah.
Interesting. And I think that goes to show even the fact that you ended up at a Division 3 school, but you
Hmm.
had that coach who was someone who really inspired you and believed in you. Whereas who knows what would have happened if you went to Division 1, you might have not have had the same relationship with your coach.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's like everything kind of works out as it's meant to. And
Hmm.
it's nice that even at that, lower level, you still
Hmm.
had that guidance to like at least go for it and see what happens.
No, absolutely. I like and like I feel like we'll obviously touch on this more, but I really big belief that like everything kind of happens for a reason. Like
Hmm.
whether you see it or not, like at that time, like it's happening because it's meant for you. So
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing because yeah, like I think the school that I was at, like the athletic performance or the athletic sort of like I guess, yeah, part that I was in, like it really allowed me to express myself. Like I was able to make mistakes. Like I was able to try new things. Like I was able to, you know, feel like I was standing out like week in, week out and playing. So I think for
Yeah.
me it was really important. And yeah.
Even
I
as a
wrote,
confidence builder, would you say?
oh yeah, absolutely. Like I think obviously there's a danger in terms of becoming, I feel like, too comfortable and having like too
Okay.
much of a safety net. Like that's definitely one of my beliefs. But for me, I think it was good in sort of that phase of my development because like I said, like I could make mistakes. Like I could try things. Like I could really be
Mm,
like try and be creative and stuff. And like I knew that, like next week it wouldn't really affect me in terms of whether or not I'd play. So,
okay. Do
yeah.
you think there's like a way to avoid this kind of safety net? Like if you were just doing so great week in, week out, and you're like, okay, now I'm the best. Like how do you avoid that going to your head and over like feeling almost like cocky versus confident.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always been a big believer in like I feel like so many people as well would probably say this, but I don't think there's such thing as being too good or like being the best. Like I feel like
Mm,
there's always gonna be someone who's better than you, and like
okay.
even if you're in like a pool and like you feel that like, oh hey, I'm definitely one of the best ones here or whatever, like eventually you're gonna go to a different place and then you're not gonna be that. And so I feel like you always need to keep working, like just keep developing yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so keeping
eventually,
that in your mind of like,
oh,
okay, there's no
absolutely.
peak, and
Hmm.
like if I reach this bar, like it's gonna raise, and like not
Absolutely.
feeling
Absolutely.
overconfident. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's good
But
advice.
and like I wrote down a bunch of lessons that I feel like I've learned throughout my journey, but I
Hmm.
feel like the conversation that we just had like really is applicable to this one. And I just want to say like for me, like first lesson is that there's no singular path to success. And
Hmm.
like I feel like first whenever people talk about success, like they think it's like really exponential. So like as soon as you start doing well, you're just gonna keep doing well.
Yeah,
But so like but I feel like yeah, exactly. But I feel like success really is like more of like a roller coaster. Like you're gonna
mm,
have highs, you're gonna have lows, but like just because you've hit a low doesn't mean you're like still not on the path to success. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of people might get discouraged on their journeys, like if they've been doing really, really well and then all of a sudden they're at a low because they might think, oh, what I'm doing isn't working. But I feel like the realization that success actually is more of like filled with ups and downs, like I feel like that might help
yes.
people
Yeah,
continue on
there's like
that
a
path.
I love that. There's an infographic I remember. It was like what people think success, and it was like just like the line from A to B. And then it
Yeah.
was like what success actually is. And it's like this chaotic loop of just like up,
Yeah.
down, around. Sometimes you go back. Like, and I love that because I think so many people, again, like you said, will get discouraged if they have a setback, or it's like, oh, I feel like I'm taking, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But it's like if you keep your goal in mind and you genuinely care about what you're doing, I think like just keep pushing forward and
Oh,
like you'll figure
absolutely.
it out. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I think too, like obviously my journey's been very unique, I think, because, I feel like I've experienced a lot of things that maybe a lot of other professionals might not have. But like in terms of like there's not a singular path to success, like I think that's so true. And I attribute like a lot of this maybe to social media and maybe to like the fact that we have so much at our disposal. But kids see these days, they see like what other professionals have done. And I feel like maybe
Mm,
try and replicate what they've done almost to a T. And I feel like that can be good, but at the same time, it can be also harmful. Like, say, like, for me, like, I got cut from my middle school team, like, and I played the lowest level of college soccer, and, I struggled at all these different places, but now I'm playing professional soccer, and I feel like a lot of kids maybe see, oh, this guy's gone, and he's played for this team, and then he's played for this team, and then he's signed pro. Like, that's what I have to do. But just because
mm.
like one of those steps doesn't work out doesn't mean like your journey is like over or like that you're not meant for this. Like I feel like that's really important to like consider.
I feel like on social media we see sometimes we also see like the end result. Like you don't always see the journey or like the behind the scenes. That's like the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for kids it's like social media is hard because sometimes you only see like people's success. Like I could look at
Yeah,
your,
true.
Instagram and be like, "Oh, cool." Like, he looks like he's doing great, but like you don't see all like the behind the scenes that kind of
Yeah.
led them to there. And then I love what you said about trying to replicate other people's journey. I think it's so easy to compare ourselves with social media. And even in like what I'm doing, it's like I might see someone that I think is successful and think like, okay, well, what did they do to get, their success? But again, you can't replicate someone else. Like you have to, I feel like, be who you are. And like it's
Yeah.
not going to be the same as someone else's journey.
No, absolutely. And I feel like too, like, yeah, that's really important what you said about like comparing yourself and like, I don't know, just yeah, obviously with like the internet and social media, you only see one side of people. Like no one ever posts like when they're having a bad day or like, what they're struggling with, or very few people. I guess that's how it's become more
Yeah.
and more prominent. But yeah, it's very, very rare. And so like, yeah, exactly. For me, like, I don't know, it's been like 4 or 5 years of just like hard work, like sacrifice, like a lot of tears, like, and yeah, no one's seen that,
Yeah.
like no one sees that. They just see, oh, he signed a professional contract and that's it. So yeah, 100% agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to when you were 18 and you decided, like, okay, I want to go for it. I'm going to put in the work and I want to see what
Hmm.
could happen. Like, What kind of lifestyle changes did you have to make at that point to really feel like you needed to commit to this? And was it like positive, and what were kind of maybe negatives as well that you feel like influenced you?
It really didn't really cross my mind until I was probably about 20 and like I had this meeting with my coach. But yeah, my coach said, like just really be prepared to like sacrifice. You're gonna have to do a lot of things that other people just aren't doing. Like your lifestyle's gonna have to change. Like you just need to think more about what you eat. Like obviously like very limited like partying, drinking, and obviously for a lot of people that's a huge experience in college. Sorry, any parents who are listening to that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that is the truth. Um, so yeah, like it was definitely a major sort of mindset shift. And yeah, I mean, I went through a really tough time like right about then in college as well, like for me mentally. You know, I felt like I had everything at 1 minute and then next minute I didn't like, I didn't really feel comfortable in myself, at this point. And like
Mm,
there's obviously a lot of sort of thoughts going around. So I ended up ending my relationship. I lost a lot of people in my life who I thought were friends. And maybe I think obviously, honestly, it was just a blessing in disguise kind of that happened. But, like during that time, it was very, very, very difficult. And so like, yeah, I don't know. But after that, yeah, like it was just, yeah, it was a lot of sacrifice, like a lot of sort of overcoming, I guess, myself and, my own thoughts. But yeah.
okay. I like what you
Hmm.
said about like a blessing in disguise, because I
Hmm.
think especially at that early, like in your early 20s, your friends like matter so much. So you
Oh
suddenly being
yeah.
like, okay, I want to be professional. I need to like, you know, take the time to actually dive into this and make some
Hmm.
changes. And some people are not going to want to stick around for that because they're doing what people do in their early 20s. So I feel like,
Absolutely.
and at that time, it's probably really hard to like, wow, I've just lost all these friends.
Hmm.
But it's almost like sometimes you see these lessons like down the line. Like you said, everything happens for a reason. You don't always see it right away, but I feel like at some point in the future, you end up being like, oh, like that's why that had to happen.
Absolutely. And like I think too, like for me, I think one of my biggest weaknesses is that I always try and see the best in people. Like I always kind of just assume people are like have good intentions. But that
Mm,
and I mean obviously I think that's a strength as well, but I think sometimes for me it can hinder me in terms of like maybe not necessarily being able to cut people out of my life. And so I think maybe at that time, like had none of this sort of happened, like had I not lost all these friends, had I not, done whatever, like maybe I wouldn't be in the position I am now because maybe I wouldn't have cut these people out of my life. And like I think I was really fortunate too because I think obviously there's a lesson like I feel like there's a huge like beauty in the struggle. Like I feel like for a lot of people like you don't really change, you don't
mm.
really like start to like really consider what you're doing until you really reach like a low. And so I think for me it was really important. And yeah, like I think kind of leads into my next lesson, like be very conscious of like who's in your circle. And I think really try and keep your circle very small.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
And I think too, you have to surround yourself with people who are like minded and are people who are driven, even if they're not working on the exact same thing, like just people in general who are like minded and you see working hard and that motivate you. Like you have to
Yeah.
surround yourself with the people that you almost want to become or that
Mm-hmm.
you admire in a way, because that pushes you to keep going.
100%. Yeah, like I think if you have an opportunity to be kind of like the worst in the group, if that makes sense, like if you do anything, like say like for me, if I go into a
Mm,
training group and I'm like not if I'm the worst one there, for me it's like an absolute blessing because I know like I'm just gonna be pushed to like a whole new level. So yeah, 100% agree with that. And like I think too, like I'm a big believer in like energy and like what people sort of bring to you as well. Like I think so for me, like at least pursuing like professional sport and like elite sport, and like really it's true in anything. Like it's the small margins that are kind of gonna make or break my career. And like I'm sure it's like the same with like a lot of other people's careers. But like for me, I have to be really able to trust the people around me. I need to trust their opinions. I need to trust what they're like bringing to me because like if I get bad energy from someone or like someone says something to me like maybe before a game, that might affect like how I play the next day. And like that could possibly be like the difference in terms of me maybe like impressing someone at that game or not impressing someone at that game. Like you don't really know like how these small things are going to impact your career. And I feel
mm,
like it can literally be the smallest thing, like someone says something or someone's energy. So like for me, it's really important that the people I'm surrounding myself with are always bringing me like positive like energy and just like good thoughts and good opinions.
It's so true how energy definitely affects us. And I like what you said of like carrying it into the next day. Like there's a time and place maybe for certain conversations to happen or like conflict. Like sometimes you need to save it for when you're not close to a game so that that's not consuming your mind. So I feel like there's just, as a professional athlete, there's just so many added things that you have to be almost like meticulous about in order to feel like you're going out and like able to perform your best, because at the end of the day it is your job. Like it's great that you get to do it,
Yeah,
but there is pressure in that fact that like, yeah, this is also my job as much as I love it. Like how do you
yeah,
manage that side of it?
yeah. So I mean, so my current partner now, like she's been obviously like really sort of influential in my career. And she's also actually a professional footballer as well. So yeah, that's been massive. But she sent me this video, and it was of this footballer named Chicharito, right? And he says in this video, he says that like
Mm-hmm.
it's so important just to play for the love of the game. And for me, I think that's something really important because, like you said, like football is now sort of my career, like it's my profession. But I still think it's really important to just remind myself like why I'm doing it. And like even if I wasn't playing professionally, and like if I wasn't playing, like at like an elite sort of standard, like I still would be playing anyways, just because I love it. And so for me, that really kind of sort of grounds
Mm-hmm.
me and also helps me sort of keep like a good mentality all the time and like just try and enjoy like the little things because yeah, like ultimately it's not really about the destination. It's just about like your journey. So trying to enjoy like obviously as much of it as I can,
Mm-hmm.
like I think really helps me.
I'd love to hear a little bit about England and like the challenges you faced going to England, because I know the soccer or football, like just the style there is very aggressive and different. So how was your time like when you first went to Europe?
Yeah. So I'll give like a quick sort of career background because I think that'll sort of help give some clarity. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, so I played Division 3 soccer and then after I think my junior season, I signed semi-professionally with a team in Pittsburgh. That was like a good experience for me because it was like the first really cutthroat experience like I had, where decisions were being made strictly on sort of performance alone. And so while it definitely didn't go maybe how exactly I planned, I learned a lot about myself. Like I learned, for me physically, that's one of the biggest improvements I have. And so like I just decided I was going to move to England by myself and just try and I was literally my only intention was to play like a season there, just learn to be more physical, learn to be more aggressive, learn I think more tactically as well. And yeah, so I ended up moving there. Had to study. I say having to study because yeah, I just didn't want to do any more school. But yeah, it was a good experience and like I mean, it was a good experience, but at the same time, it was just not a good experience. Like I really, really struggled there. Like really struggled to adjust. Yeah, I found it very, very difficult. Like the style was
Mm.
just like you said, so different to what I experienced. I also experienced like I feel like a lot of politics for the first time, like where decisions were being made sort of based on more of like a because I know this person, not necessarily based on the performances that were being made week in, week out. So that was quite difficult. So yeah, I did a season in England. Definitely felt like I got a lot out of it. Was very happy with sort of my overall growth. Went and trialed in Italy because like I only planned to stay a season. Went and trialed in Italy. Ended up actually getting two professional contracts or two full-time contracts offered. Picked one that fell through because of my visa and passport, and that was incredibly frustrating because yeah, yeah, I feel like I had it. I had everything I wanted right there and then for just
Yeah,
reasons
you're like,
out of
I
my
literally
control.
have it. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, terrible.
crazy.
Terrible, terrible. But yeah, obviously it happened for a reason, so um yeah, but I was really, really frustrated. Came back to England, trialed at like a couple clubs and like divisions higher. None of them ended up working out because like I feel like I had underperformed at the level I was playing at previously, so a lot of clubs didn't want to take a chance on me there. Really frustrating. Played another season in England. Like hey, this one I felt like I really just did not enjoy. Like the first club I signed for, I felt like the managers played his friends, his family, like just didn't really value me in terms of what I brought and whatever. So yeah, left. Signed with a new club, and that was a good experience. Like I was able to play week in, week out, the manager was, I think, probably one of the best guys that I've
Mm-hmm.
met. And for me, like I'll always play better like under a manager who I feel like values me and wants the best out of me, because like that's just someone I'll, like I'll basically go to war
Yeah.
for, so
Like during this time when you're playing for England or like in England and it's not working and you're
yeah.
feeling like it's all politics, it's aggressive, like did it almost take some of like your love of the game away and were you feeling like negative at this time? Like how did you kind of push through that
hmm
side of it or what were you feeling about like the things that were going on?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think first to like preface it too, like obviously my experiences in England were not the best for me, and I definitely met some people who were 100% detrimental to like my career, probably detrimental to my mental health in some aspects as well. But like I feel like for me, like I have
Mm-hmm.
no like I only wish the best for them. Like I have no sort of like bad feelings towards any of them. Like obviously I don't think they help me, but I think like I said, like it all happens for a reason. And so like I feel maybe I wouldn't be there without any of these experiences. There were definitely times where I was just really negative. Like I was just like, oh, like after this, like I don't want to be here. Like I just don't want to be doing this. And yeah, it is really difficult. And
Yeah.
100% took like definitely a part of my love of the game away. But I just thought like I don't know, I always had this just inner like sort of belief that I was gonna do it. Like I was gonna play professionally. And like I think this kind of leads into my next lesson. Like I think it's so important to be like inwardly confident but outwardly quiet. And I feel like your self-belief like has to be so strong in like what you're doing. Like I say, you have to be so steadfast in your conviction. Like in in other words, like you have to be so sure of what you're doing that it doesn't even matter what happens. Like it doesn't matter what anyone says, like the struggles that you have or whatever, because like you're just so sure that you're gonna do it. And like I
Yeah.
say, you almost have to be delusional. Like you have to be to a point of delusion, which sounds really weird because a lot of people have a very negative connotation when you say like delusion. But personally, I think it's
Yeah.
like not necessarily a bad thing. I think like all the successful people in life were probably like considered delusional at some point. Like, I mean, like Apple started out of like a
Definitely.
garage, like I'm sure people called like
Yeah.
Steve Jobs delusional at some point. So I just think like you have to be so sure in what you're doing that, and you have to be like almost unbreakable in like your, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, mental belief.
Okay.
So
I love that because I think what you said is like, in hindsight, you're like happy with the England experience. It made you who you are, but definitely when you're in it,
yeah,
it's so hard. So I like that you mentioned like getting through it was just like this almost self belief, almost delusion that like, okay, well, I just have to keep going. And I love that because obviously, if you gave up, you wouldn't be where you were today. So I think that's super important of like, if you have the vision and you have the goal, believe it to a sense of delusion. And I think delusion is like kind of more of like a trend right now where everyone's like, "Oh, I'm so delusional and like this is why it's great for me." So I think it's
yeah,
spinning from negative to positive in terms of like, I see videos on TikTok of like people explaining why you have to be delusional and like just believe in yourself. But like it totally works because it's kind of that manifestation. If you believe it's going to happen,
yeah.
it like keeps you going even when you're struggling. So I think that's
No,
super
absolutely.
important.
I think the other important thing too is like when you're like really sure of yourself, you also kind of know your worth. And I think for me, like obviously like I was saying, like I finished the season in England, my second season in England. I was just so resigned like not to play there again. So like I basically just looked for, different opportunities abroad and was really fortunate to have, this one Lithuania kind of come my way. But for me, like I felt that I had gotten everything that I could have out of England. Like I learned to be more physical, I learned to be more aggressive. Like I'd done what I came for. And I think after I traveled in Italy and I got these contracts, like it just affirmed to me that the work that I was putting in, the things I was doing, they were good because like there were clubs, not in England, I guess that valued them. So for me, like I just felt that like I could be successful. Like I could be like an elite athlete, but maybe not necessarily in England. And so I had an analogy for this, right? Like if you go if you go to the store and you buy a bottle of water, it's $1. If you go to a convenience store and you buy that same bottle of water, it could be $2. If you go to the movie theater, you buy that bottle of water, it's $4. And if you go maybe to like a ballpark and you buy a bottle of water, it'd be $7. And so you've bought the same product, like the bottle of water is the exact same, but it's just valued differently at different places. And I think that's such an important lesson. Like for me, like I could play professionally, like I had an offer in Italy, but for me, like England was just not the right place for me, you know?
I
And I
love
feel
that.
like, yeah, I feel like once you realize that, and once I realized that, it really gave me freedom to like explore and look in other places. And so, yeah, I just think knowing that, like, if you've done the work and if you feel that you're at a good place, but you're still struggling, it might not necessarily be you. It could just be the situation that you're in. And so, like, knowing
Like
that
the
gives you sort of,
environment.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, like,
Okay.
knowing that gives you like a better perspective in terms of like being able to evaluate like where you are and like your surroundings.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back a little bit to the lesson you said about your inner belief needs to be super strong, but your confidence outwardly should be quiet. Can we talk
hmm
about that second part? Because we kind of touched on like the delusion, but then
hmm
how do you feel like it's important to have quiet confidence where you're the way you present yourself to the
Yeah,
world?
absolutely. Well, I just feel like obviously, I know this, I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting myself because like I really do try and see the best in people, but I feel like there's so many people out there who like just try and like bring you down. Like they just try and pull you down, especially with like social media and like I just think too like everyone's going to have an opinion, you know? And so like I feel like if you're like very sort of outward like confident like in terms of like what you want to do if you portray yourself in like a certain way but people are going to come for you like that's just like
Mhm.
an ultimate like sort of thing like people are going to say things about you. You're going to say like oh you shouldn't be doing this like this is you know like everyone's going to give you their opinion but if you're quietly confident you don't sort of share that. I feel like it just makes your experience a lot easier because there's sort of less noise that you might have to deal with, so that's kind of
Okay.
why I said
So it's
that.
like
Yeah,
just being mindful of who you share information with, how you share information, and like, yeah, what you're giving outwardly.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so when you first went to Europe, or even now in your current living situation, like, did you have kind of general culture shock? Or what advice would you give people kind of wanting to maybe move to like a new country
hmm
and have no idea about like the lifestyle?
Oh yeah, I mean, even with England, like massive culture shock. Like I feel, I feel like obviously it's really good because like you meet new people, you learn new cultures, like you learn new things. But yeah, at the same time, it's like difficult, you know, like you're away from home, like you're always sort of like the outsider, if you will, you
Mhm.
know, and especially here, like nobody speaks any English, or like very few people speak like good English, so it is quite difficult. Like,
Yeah, and how do you even like day to day, do you feel like you get lonely? Like I know you have your partner who is I guess is long distance right now
hmm
or
yeah, long distance right now. So
okay.
yeah.
But day to day, do you feel like even just going out and about that it's like challenging to kind of go through the day? I mean, or how did you kind of get used to that?
Yeah. I mean, like the days when we're training and stuff, yeah, it's really not that bad because obviously it's like we're full time, so it's like you just go and you don't
True.
really think about it. But yeah, the off days it is really tough because yeah, like I don't know, it's just yeah, it's really like unfamiliar, like I don't speak the language, so I mean, yeah, it is kind of challenging sometimes. Like I do feel sometimes that I'm just like out here alone.
Yeah, I remember I lived in France for a bit, and I remember thinking like, at least I speak French. Like, I think if I went somewhere to live where I didn't know the language, even France was culture shock for sure. But I
Yeah.
think not knowing the language just is this added layer of you just can't even read signs, you can't read label. Like, I just think that would be so crazy to navigate.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like anyone who wants to go abroad and like, I don't know, is maybe like a bit nervous, a bit scared of like experiencing like this new culture, like, I don't know, I just feel like there's nothing to be like afraid of. Like, I think it's
Hmm.
obviously such a great experience, like, just to be exposed to like new things. It gives you like such a new outlook and perspective like on life. And like,
Yeah.
so obviously, like I said, I was living with a couple of Ukrainians, and obviously everyone knows the situation there right now is like very undesirable and it's like very, very sad. But I think for me, it's definitely put a lot of sort of my own challenges and my problems and like into perspective. And it's definitely sort of helped me become more grateful, I think, for the things that I have. Because like their situation, like I couldn't even imagine like being a part of, you know, like one of my friends, like his family is still in like his Ukrainian city. And like he literally showed me a video of yeah, he showed me a video the other day of like his city literally being bombed. Like there was a video
Gosh.
of a missile hitting a building like behind this reporter, you know? And like his family's there, like his friends are there, so I can't even imagine, sort of what he's going through. And so for me, it kind of puts into perspective. Obviously, like everyone has problems and everyone's going to have issues, but like just trying to remind yourself of the things you do have and be grateful for those is obviously like incredibly important. Yeah.
Focusing as much as you can on like the positive and like what you do have.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
obviously, your feelings, if you have stuff that you're going through, are obviously valid. But I think in a general sense, it is helpful to put things in perspective and realize, like, okay, you know, these are all the things I do have to be grateful for, even if it's like a bad day or a bad week. It's like there's always something that you can frame in your mind that's like positive.
Absolutely.
Okay, what are some of the other life lessons that you have? Or like what's something we haven't touched on yet? Did we miss
Yeah.
any?
Well, I mean, I'll just go back to what I said like previously because I definitely want to like
Hmm.
elaborate.
Sure.
In terms of like being comfortable, like or be comfortable like being alone. I think that's like really important. Like obviously, if you're gonna go traveling, or like for me, I guess like where I am in terms of like sports and stuff, like your journey realistically at some point or another, you're gonna feel lonely. Like you're gonna feel that you are alone. And I think just being able to sort of be at peace with yourself and be like sort of mindful of like the things that you're doing sort of are for like the betterment of you is something really to keep in mind. Like, I mean, for me, like, I think, I've been training pretty intensely for probably like the last like 5 years, And so like I always felt like what I was doing, like not many other people were doing, at least in sort of my sphere. Like there was like late nights, like training, like eating right. Like I felt like I was doing like all this stuff that like nobody else was doing, nobody else was seeing. But I just always had to keep in mind sort of that it was for this one purpose, this one goal that I had. And but I feel like it's really like important, like in terms of like other things. Like I know like some of the podcasts you speak about, it's like in terms of like relationships and like dating and stuff like that. And I think, like if you're comfortable being alone and you're comfortable like sort of just like always doing things for yourself and improving yourself and stuff, like you're ultimately always going to meet like good people along that way because you've gone out there with like zero intentions to try and meet people almost
Yeah.
like people, good people are kind of just going to come your way because you're focused on like yourself. So
Okay.
I think things like that are really important as well.
Yeah. So for someone who maybe is feeling lonely right now and they're like, okay, I want to feel more comfortable with myself and I want to kind of get to that place, but like they don't know where to start. Like what would you say are like things that person might want to do to help them kind of gain this comfort in being alone?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to like try and get like tiny wins in your life. And so like what I mean by that is like if you can do something every day, or like you can do something for yourself every day, or even just accomplish things like every day, like, and just see those as like small wins, like slowly and slowly, you're going to have like more and more sort of wins in your life, if you will. And eventually that's going to build it to a point where you feel really, really good about yourself. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, for me, like, it might have been, I think it's a bit different with sports, but, like for me, it was kind of like, oh, if I'm lifting this amount like every day, or like, say, like I had like three really good meals, or like I don't know, ran like a personal best, and like some fitness thing or whatever, like, I don't know. It's like things like that where I can look back over the course of the day and say, hey, I did this really well, like today. And that sort of leads me into the next day being sort of already in a good mindset, already confident in myself, and then just able to sort of keep doing those things, um, and feeling good. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's almost like for you, it's like, okay, slowly building up your confidence, and then that will lead to kind of just this general confidence or comfort in like what you're
Yeah,
doing. Okay.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
like that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
me, something I would try to do when I was kind of in this stage of like, okay, I'm really lonely and like I don't do a lot by myself, is I tried to push myself out of the comfort zone of like, okay, I'm gonna go do things alone. And like I started like taking myself on dates and it was small. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to a little coffee shop or go for a walk. And then it was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna take myself out for dinner or like I'm gonna take myself to the
Yeah.
movies. And like the more I push myself to do like these little things that normally you don't do by yourself,
Hmm.
or it's like feel awkward to do alone. The more I
Hmm.
did them, the more it's like it just became normal and natural. So I feel like also just, you know,
Yeah.
just push yourself to do it even if you feel a little uncomfortable because then you kind of get comfortable or build that
Yeah.
confidence for sure.
No, yeah, that's actually sick you said that because there's actually such a stigma about like going out and eating alone. And those are totally unrelated. But yeah, that
Yeah.
like I do that all the time, and it's like the best thing ever. Like you don't
It's
have to talk
so
to anyone. Yeah, you just eat your
yeah.
food. It's like amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
like I didn't have to cook this, but I also can just
yeah.
be in silence by myself. And it's funny because if first, like, I remember the first time I took myself to dinner, I felt super awkward. I was like fidgeting. I was like, where do I look? What do I do with
Hmm.
my hands? But like, as you do it more, you just have this calm of like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to eat. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. No, that is so true. I saw this phrase, like it was this saying. It's like I mean, it's kind of cringe, but it was like I'm comfortable eating alone because I know what I bring to the table. And I think that's like so applicable.
That's
Like I don't
funny.
know. Yeah. But
Yeah. No, but I think it's true. And like what you said about just being comfortable in yourself is going to allow you to meet the right people. I think I'm in a
hmm.
stage right now where I'm trying to meet as many people as I can. I just like enjoy meeting people.
Yeah.
So I've been more open to like pushing myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. Um, but at the same time, it does come from this place of like, okay, if I meet a new person and it doesn't work out or we don't click, whether it's like a friendship or whatever, like I'm okay with it. Like I don't have this sense of like, oh, I'm so disappointed because I'm like, well, I'm good where I am. It's just like I want to see if I can find people that like add something to my life, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, like when you set out and you like have a purpose of just like sort of being on your own or like self-improving, like I just think just things happen to you that like you don't really expect. And like obviously for the good, like I mean I went to England, right, and like my sole purpose was football. Like I had no intention of
Hmm.
like dating anyone, whatever. And obviously like I met my partner when I was in England, and like yeah, she's been just so like just like the best thing I could ask for, in terms of
Yeah.
like with my career and my life in terms of that. So yeah, I just think good things happen to you too when you're just like focusing on yourself and like doing things for yourself. So
Yes. When you're not
mhm.
obsessing over it and you're just like not thinking, like usually that's, they always say, like, oh, you meet someone when you're not thinking about it or when you're like
Yeah.
not too focused on like what you lack, right? Because if you're
Hmm.
thinking like, oh, I just want a girlfriend or I just want a partner or whatever, it's like, well, then you're coming from a place of like you're missing something
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then it might not happen. So I like that
Yeah.
you said that you're just focused on yourself. Can I ask you about how like long distance is? Like how challenging is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously really difficult. Like, so me and my partner, we like live together, for like quite a bit,
Mm,
and so like I think when you're in someone's company, like for like every day for like however many months, and then all of a sudden you're not there, like it is really really tough. But I think because she's also a professional footballer, it makes it like way easier. Like I feel like there's things I don't necessarily need to explain. And like she sort of is obviously doing the same things I am every day. So like I feel it's just this really mutual understanding between us both. And like yeah, like I was saying, like I mean her mentality and her mindset is like so elite. Like I can't even begin to explain how like strong it is and stuff. So like for me it's been like really good
mm-hmm.
because like I feel like I can always talk to her about things and like she'll always give me like these good perspectives. So yeah, but it is really hard. Like just FaceTiming every day is just so brutal. Like,
Yeah, it sounds like you're putting yourself in the company of people who are
yeah,
obviously maybe not necessarily in the same path as you, but like it's nice to feel like you both understand the role of being a professional athlete. So it's like
absolutely.
you don't have to feel like you need to explain certain things. Like I totally understand that. Where it's like sometimes it's like some people just don't get it. And it
Yeah,
can be hard and they want more. They want you to explain, but it's nice that you feel like you don't even have to. It's like you just know.
yeah, absolutely. I
And
feel like too,
I like
like,
that.
yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I feel like too, like over the last couple months, that's something I've been really conscious about is trying to surround myself with people who, exactly like you said, like, had the same mindset I didn't have to explain things to. Like I worked really closely with like a strength and conditioning coach like over the last couple of months, and I had a really good training group in the off season, like of international players, like other professional players. And so I think just being surrounded by these people like really helped me in terms of just like always feeling that yeah, like today is just I go out and do sort of my thing, and there's no explaining, no whatever, like everyone's on the same page.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about kind of getting your current contract. How did that come about? Because we talked a little bit about how Italy fell through
Yeah.
and then what happened.
But it actually came through one of my friends. Like he actually ended up messaging me on LinkedIn. He was just like, "Hey, I have this opportunity. Like, do you want it?" And then, yeah, it was actually crazy. Like the same day that this happened, I ended up getting two other offers, one in South Africa, one in France, and then this one in Lithuania. And yeah, I just picked the one in Lithuania. It seemed like the best in terms of opportunity, like experience. And yeah, so I went out and they invited me for a 10-day trial. Trialed for 5 days, and then yeah, on the fifth day they just offered me a contract. So yeah, I just signed professionally. It was crazy.
Wow.
Like sometimes it doesn't even feel real. When I signed the contract, right? Like it didn't feel necessarily how I thought it was gonna feel. Like it's been like the one thing I've been pursuing probably for like 4 or 5 years now. And like I really thought it would feel very different, but I signed the piece of paper and then, gave it back to him, took a photo, took a couple pictures, and yeah, that was it. And like, I don't know, I just think it teaches you that like it's always about the journey and it's not necessarily about like the destination. Because like now I've signed this
Mm,
contract, now I've signed a pro contract and like I've done it and I just want like the next thing. And so like if you're just looking at your life from like destination
absolutely.
to destination, yeah, it's just like I just think you're not going to enjoy it as much. So that's what I'd say. It's a lesson there.
I love that. Yeah, because we think we want something and then our whole vision gets like skewed to that one thing. But people don't realize that like it's the journey that's like the exciting part. Because once you get that thing, again, it's like the bar just is going to raise a little higher. And now you just
Hmm.
like, okay, I signed it, but like now I want to perform well. I want to keep going and I want to see what could be next. So it's like enjoying that process. And I like what you
Yeah.
said about progress because sometimes I think it can be hard to see how far we've come, especially if you maybe hit a bump in the road or you hit a low
Hmm.
and you feel like, oh my God, do I keep going? Should I give up? But if you actually take the chance or take the time to reflect and like look back and be like, wait, look at where I was a year ago and how much I've grown. So I love that. Okay, before we wrap, can I ask you a couple like rapid fire questions?
Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
What is your preferred coaching style?
100%. Yeah, I'd say it's a man manager. So like someone who sort of is might not necessarily be the best tactically, but is really, really good at like managing their players in terms of just like checking in on them, making sure that they're happy, like just sort of being invested in their lives, also outside of being like an athlete or a footballer. And like for me, like I said, like I feel like if I know that a manager is like looking out for me and is like has my best intentions in mind, regardless of the situation, like that's just someone I'll always play better for.
I love that. Again, it's like the energy. I'm the same. Like, I don't do super well when it's super cutthroat, like, because then you feel scared to, like, say something. I don't know. I like feeling supported in
Yeah.
that way. So
Oh, absolutely.
I agree with
Absolutely.
that one.
Cool.
Okay, what would be a piece of advice that maybe we haven't touched on for kind of finding the right people or building kind of connections with the right type of people?
Hmm. No, that's a good question. Like, I think just like in terms of you're going to try and build connections, like I think there's no better substitute than just like trying to talk to people. Like I feel like I don't know, we live in a digital age, right? Where like everyone's on their phones and stuff, but like if you can like are confident enough in yourself just to approach someone and just start speaking, like I feel like that's the kind of thing that's just going to naturally make connections and you're just going to meet new
Mm-hmm.
people. So,
I think meeting as many people as you can too, because then
yeah.
you'll naturally have to find some people that you click with if you're
Yeah.
trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, I think you've said this before, but I just want to say that I don't think there's such thing as embarrassment either. Like I think embarrassment is
Mm,
totally like in your own head. Like if you're, I don't know,
yes.
just yeah, but
Yeah, like what is embarrassing? It's only embarrassing
yeah,
if you feel it.
that's what I
Like
mean.
if
Yeah, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
it's like we get embarrassed because of the social pressure of like, oh my God, everyone's staring. I must have done something embarrassing. But if you just like walk away confidently, then
yeah. Who cares?
you can't look stupid if like you don't feel stupid. So I think that also goes
Absolutely.
back to just building confidence. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I think when you're not super confident, it's definitely easier to feel like everyone's eyes are like on you or like
On
looking
you. Yeah.
for like the embarrassing things you're doing. But I also think so many people are actually just in their own head. We think
Hmm.
people are paying more attention to us than they actually are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Okay, before we wrap, what would be one last piece of advice, one last lesson that you would want to share that we haven't touched on?
Maybe just like that nothing great ever comes like easy. And like I feel like for anyone who's like trying to do anything related to like high performance or just like be elite in whatever thing, like just knowing that is like really important. Like for me, it's obviously I'm able to do this great thing every day, right? Like I'm a professional footballer. Like I literally play a game as like my job, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like there's been so many like hardships, setbacks, sacrifices. Like I mean, I haven't seen my family in, forever. Like I haven't been home for like a Thanksgiving in years. Like, I've missed, like important milestones for my family, my friends. Like, I haven't been there. And, I think that's something really difficult, like for me, obviously. And then obviously there's been loads of sacrifice, like lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes. So like, yeah, I just think that, yeah, nothing great, ever really comes easy, and that you just need to be prepared for that if you're gonna go out and chase it. So, okay.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
I love that, Danny. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I feel like so many people will get so many good tidbits from this, whether you're an athlete or not. So that's
hmm
awesome. Before we close off, is there anywhere that people can keep up with you if they wanted to follow you on Instagram?
Yeah, so the current club I'm playing in has like social media, and they're called FK Garlava, spelled Garliava. And then my own social media, my Instagram is Danny Reid with three N's. So yeah,
Okay,
that's where you can find me.
awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Danny, and thank you everyone for listening, and we will chat with you next time.
Sounds good.